have done to others, except when to do so would harm them or others. Happy are the merciful, Matthew 5:7. Happy are the peacemakers, Matthew 5:9. Reserve a daily time with God for self-examination, Bible reading, and prayer in order to know God and His will for my life and to gain the power to follow His will. Yield myself to God to be used to bring this good news to others, both by my example and by my words. Happy are those who are persecuted because they do what God requires, Matthew 5:10. My pleasure. Thanks for coming today.
Thanks, Greg. Next on our agenda, you see in the bulletin, there's chip ceremony. The thing about the chip ceremony is nothing more than showing your progress in your recovery. So usually the first chip that you need to take is called the blue chip. And this is where, when we mentioned the one up there, you consciously choose to let Christ be in control of your life. So any journey always starts with the first steps. So as a people, if anybody here today wants to start on a new journey, just come forward and get a blue chip. Now, like I said, it's just not for addicts and alcoholics or anything that you're working on. You get the blue chip. If you should have a relapse on any of the things, then come back and get a blue chip. You just take it till you make it. Don't give up, because God hasn't given up on you, so don't give up on yourself. So then we hand out chips for the first chip, the blue one, then it goes 30, 60, 90, 4 months, up to a year, and then they give year, 18 months, 2 years, and on. I got my chip from here the other day for being alcohol-free for the last 42 years, something like that. On here. When the fellows that started AA, they used to give out nickels. But the nickel was used to give, if you felt like you were going to take a drink, if you had the nickel, then you could call somebody and talk about it. But then I had to explain to some of the youngsters in there what a phone booth was and a paid phone. So they kind of got the idea now on there. So usually the first lesson we teach here today is we're going to be in denial. It starts with principle 1. It says, realize that I am not God. I admit that I am powerless to control my tendency to do the wrong thing and that my life is unmanageable. Happy are those who know they are spiritually poor. That's Matthew 5:3. Step 1, we admit we are powerless over our addictions and compulsive behavior, that our lives have become unmanageable. For I know that no good itself dwells within me, that is my sinful nature. For I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. That's Romans 7:18. So to begin this journey, together, the journey of the road to recovery, this journey begins with principle 1, where we admit that we are powerless to control our tendency to do the wrong thing and that our lives have become unmanageable and out of control. Before we can begin this exciting journey together, we need to ask ourselves 2 questions. Am I going to let my past failures prevent me from taking this journey? And am I afraid of change? Or what are my fears of the future? So in Hebrews 12:21, it says, since we have such a huge crowd of men of faith watching us from the grandstand, let us strip off anything that slows us down, holds us back, and especially those sins that wrap themselves tightly around our feet and trip us up. Let us run with patience and the particular race that God has set before us. Particular race. There are 2 things I'd like to point out about that verse. First, God has a particular race and a unique plan for each of us. A plan for good, not for a life full of dependencies, addictions, and obsessions. The second thing is, We need to be willing to get rid of all unnecessary baggage, the past failures in our lives that keep us stuck. Again, it says, let us strip off anything that slows us down or holds us back, and especially those sins that wrap themselves tightly around our feet and trip us up. For many of us, our past hurts, hang-ups, and habits hold us back, trip us up. Many of us are stuck in bitterness over what someone has done to us. We continue to hold on to that hurt, and we refuse to forgive the ones who have hurt us. You may have been hurt deeply. Perhaps you were abused as a child, or maybe you were or are in a marriage where your spouse has committed adultery. I want you to know that I hurt for you out there. I'm truly sorry that you had to go through it, but holding on to that hurt and not being willing to forgive the person who hurt you, excuse me, but holding on to that hurt, not willing to forgive the person who hurt you in the past and allowing them to continue to hurt you today in the present. Working in this Christ-centered recovery program will, with God's power, allow you to find the courage and the strength to forgive them. Now, don't get excited. You don't have to do it today or right now. But as you travel through your road to recovery, God will help you to find the willingness to forgive them and be free to hold on to your life. Some of you are bound by guilt. You keep beating yourself up over the past failures. You're trapped. You're stuck in your guilt. You think that no one anywhere is as bad as you are. That they could not love the real you, and that no one could ever forgive you for the terrible things that you have done. Well, you're wrong. God can. That's why Jesus went to the cross for our sins. He knows everything you've ever done, everything that you've ever experienced, and there are many here today that have faced similar failures and hurts in their lives and have accepted Christ's forgiveness. They are here to encourage and support you. The Apostle Paul had a lot to regret about his past. He even participated in Stephen's murder. In Philippians 3:13, he tells us, "No, dear brothers, I am still not all that I should be, but I am bringing all my energies to bear on this one thing, forgetting the past and looking forward to what lies ahead." Now, here's the bottom line. If you want to be free from your hurts, habits, hang-ups, you need to deal with your past bitterness and guilt once and for all. You need to deal with your bitterness and guilt. And like Isaiah 43:18 says, "Forget the former things and do not dwell on the past." That doesn't mean ignore the past. You need to learn that from your past and offer forgiveness, make amends, and then release it. Only then can you be free of the guilt, the grudges, and the grief. Now, let's face it, we've all stumbled over a hurt, a hang-up, or a habit. But the race isn't over yet. God isn't interested in how we started, but how we finish. I mean, you can't change your past, but your past does not have to, determine your future. Now, you may worry about the future and being afraid to change. We all worry about things that we do not have control over and do not have the power to change. And we all know that worrying is a lack of faith in God. The truth is, we can say without doubt or fear that the Lord is my helper, and I am not afraid of anything that mere man can do to me. It's Hebrews 13:6. You may have been hurt, habit, or hang-up for so long that it's become your identity. You may be thinking, what will happen if I really give recovery a chance? Will I change? If I give up my old hurts, habits, and hang-ups, what will I become? Who will I be? You may have been abusing alcohol, prescription drugs, or food. You may be afraid of what you will do without your substance of choice. You maybe have been enabling someone in a dysfunctional relationship for years. Perhaps you wonder, what if I change and my alcoholic spouse gets mad at me? God doesn't want you to stay frozen in an unhealthy relationship or a bad habit. He wants you to do your part in becoming healthy. Even if our past is extremely painful, however, we may still resist change and the freedom that can be found in really working this program. Because of our fears of the unknown and because of our despair, we just close our mind because we think we don't deserve better. As you work the principles and the steps, remember 1 John 4:18, where God's love is, there is no fear because God's perfect love dries out fear. The one thing I learned is that God is not going to change who you are. He's going to change who you aren't. You're not here by mistake. The room is full of changed lives, and it's my prayer for each of you that you will not let your past failures or fear of your future stop you from giving Celebrate Recovery a real try. Are you wearing the mask of denial tonight? Before you can make any progress in your recovery, you need to face your denial. And as soon as you remove your mask, your recovery begins. And it doesn't matter if you're new in recovery or been in it for years. Denial can rear its ugly head and return at any time. You may trade addictions into some new relationship that's unhealthy for you in a different way that the previous one did. So this lesson is for all of us. We have there's that saying, denial isn't the river in Egypt. But what is denial? Denial has been defined as false system of beliefs that are not based on reality and self-protecting behavior that keeps us from honestly facing the truth. As kids, we all learned various coping skills. They came in handy when we didn't get the attention we wanted from our parents or others, and or block out pain and our fears. For a time, these coping systems worked, but as the years progressed, they confused and clouded our view of the truth and of our lives. Our coping skills grew into denial, and most of our relations ended up broken or less fulfilling than we could have desired. Did you ever deny that your parents had problems? Did you ever deny that you had a problem? The truth is, we can all answer probably yes to that question, to some extent, but for some of us, the denial turned into the same shame and guilt. Denial is the pink elephant sitting in the middle of the room that no one in the family talks about or acknowledges in any way. Do any of the following comments sound familiar to you? Well, can we stop talking about it? Talking only makes it worse. Now, if we don't talk about it, it will go away. Well, let's pretend it really didn't happen. He really doesn't drink that much. If I tell them that it hurts me when they say those things, I'm afraid they will leave me. So-and-so drinks more than I do, and so-and-so's been married 3 times, I've only been married twice. I eat because you make me mad. And if you didn't nag me all the time, I wouldn't, and you can fill the blank in there. So look, honey, I have a tough job. I work hard. I need a few drinks to relax. Doesn't mean that I have a problem. Now that's denial. The other one is I can quit anytime I want to. As I said earlier, before you can take the first step of your recovery, you must first face and admit your denial. God says in Jeremiah 6:14, you can't heal a wound by saying it's not there. Okay, let's look at the acrostic in there, the word denial. D stands for disables our feelings. E is energy lost. N, negates growth. I, isolates us from God. A, alienates us from our relationships. And L, lengthens the pain. The D is for disable our feelings. Hiding our feelings, living in denial, freezes our emotions and binds us. Understanding our feelings and feelings that we will find freedom. 2 Peter tells us they promise them freedom while they themselves are slaves of destructive habits. For we are slaves of anything that has conquered us. For me, the basic freedom is not what I'm free to do, it's free for what I'm not free not to do. I am free not to take another drink, or drug, The letter E, which stands for energy lost. A major side effect of denial is anxiety, and anxiety causes us to waste precious energy dealing with past hurts and failures and the fear of the future. As you go through this program, you will learn that it's only in the present that positive change can occur. While worrying about the past and dreading the future makes us unable to live and enjoy God's plan for us in the future. We let our fears and worries paralyze us, but the only way that we can be free from this is by giving them to God. Psalm 146, verse 7 says, He frees the prisoners, He lifts the burdens from those bent down beneath their loads. If you are willing to transfer that energy required to maintain your denial into learning God's truth, a healthy love for others and yourself will occur. As you depend more and more on your higher power, Jesus Christ, you will see the light of truth in reality. Now let us move to the N in denial. Denial negates growth. We are sick as our secrets, and again, we cannot grow in recovery until we are ready to step out of our denial into the truth. God is waiting to take your hand and bring you out of denial. The Bible says, they cried to the Lord in their troubles, and He rescued them. He led them from the darkness and the shadows of death and snapped their chains. In Psalm 107, 13 and 14. As you travel the road of your recovery, you will come to understand that God never wastes a hurt. God will never waste your darkness, but He can't use it unless you step out of your denial into the light of His truth. Denial also isolates us from God. Now, Adam and Eve are prime examples of how secrets and denial separate us from the true fellowship with God. After they sinned, they separated themselves from God in Genesis 3:7. Then tells us that Adam and Eve hid from God because they felt naked and ashamed. Of course, good old Adam tried to rationalize. He said to God, now the woman you put here with me, that's the problem. She gave me some of the fruit from the tree in Genesis 3:12. First he tried to blame God, saying, the woman you put here. Then he tried to blame Eve. She gave me some fruit. Remember, God's light shines on the truth. Our denial keeps us in the dark. God is light, and in Him there is no darkness at all. If we claim that we have fellowship with Him and yet walk in the darkness, we lie and do not live out the truth. But if we walk in the light as He is in the light, we have fellowship with one another. And in the blood of Christ, His Son, purifies us from all sin. That's 1 John 1, 5 through 7. Our denial not only isolates from God, it alienates us from our relationship. Denial tells us that we are getting away with it. We think no one knows, but they know. But while we deny, we may shield us from the hurt. It also keeps us from helping others who are people we loved in the past. We don't dare reveal our true selves to others for fear that what they will think or say if they knew the real us. We must protect ourselves, our secrets, and at any cost, so we isolate ourselves and therefore minimize the risk of exposure and possible rejection from others. But at what price? The eventual loss of our important relationships? So what's the answer? Listen to Ephesians 4:25. Stop lying to each other. Tell the truth, for we are all parts of each other. When we lie to each other, we are hurting ourselves. Remember, it's always better to tell the ugly truth than a beautiful lie, Finally, denial lengthens the pain. We have a false belief that denial protects us from our pain. In reality, denial allows our pain to fester and grow and turns into shame and guilt. Denial extends your hurt. It multiplies your problems, you know. Truth, like any surgery, may hurt for a while, but it cures. God promises in Jeremiah 30, verse 17, I will give you back your health again and heal your wounds. Today, I encourage you to step out of your denial. Walking out on your denial is not easy. Taking off the mask is hard. Everything about you shouts, don't do it. It's not safe. But it is safe. It's safe at Celebrate Recovery. Here you have people who care about you, who love you, and who are here for you. You know, people who will stand beside you as the truth becomes your way of life. Jesus tells us, know the truth, and the truth will set you free. In John 8:32, step out of your denial so you can step into Jesus' unconditional love and grace and begin your healing power. And all God's people said, amen. All right. So after we have that, then we come up with the serenity prayer. And I thought, I think Ashley's going to come up and do that. So each of these sections, except for the lesson, we have participants from the Celebrate Recovery that come into work to do the serenity prayer, usually the open prayer, read the principles of the 12 steps. So Ashley's going to do the serenity prayer, and you guys can say it right along with her.
Hi, I'm Ashley. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus. I survived a dysfunctional household, which got me a lot of struggles in codependency, bad relationships, and a bunch of other things that God has helped me overcome, and I've come a long way. And if you could join me in the prayer for serenity. Just hit the next arrow.
Let's shut this off here. Yeah.
Should be the right arrow. I don't know what there you go. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking as Jesus did the sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next. Amen.
All right. Now, what we have here is the guidelines for small company. Keep your sharing 3 to 5 minutes, you know, and focus on your own thoughts. There's no crosstalk. And crosstalk is when you're talking to somebody else and, you know, interfering. Everybody has the freedom to express his or her feelings without interruptions. We are here to support you. We are not here to fix you on that. Anonymity and confidentiality are basic requirements here. What is said and shared in Celebrate Recovery stays here. In fact, if I would see you on the street and say hello and somebody was with me and says, how do you know that person? I can just tell them I know them from the church. I cannot say that you come to Celebrate Recovery. And that's the way how close this is. If it comes back to me that, you know, somebody discussed what was said at CR, and it happens, I'll tell you, you know, you can't say anything about what you heard here at all. And if I hear it again, you're done with this program. You know, that's how tight we kind of watch it. You know. The other thing about, the only other exception is anonymity confidentiality is if you're talking to somebody, you can give them my name and have them contact me if they want the information to Celebrate Recovery, because I'm the ministerial director and pastor of this thing on here. offensive language has no place in a Christ Recovery Center. You know. So we not only keep your language, but you have to be careful what you say, not to be too descriptive that might trigger somebody else to relapse. And the one we had later, if a leader suspects that you're under the influence of drugs or alcohol, then, you know, you can stay for the large group, but you cannot stay for the small group. Then we tell everybody that, okay, we're going to break it. We give you about a 5-minute break, and then men will meet over here, and the women will meet over in another section. And then we break down. If you notice on the sheet, your inserts there, we start out with a basic question that's on the bottom of the sheet, you know. And that was the, you know, guideline to start the topic. Then we would discuss all of the things that were in the lesson, you know, and how it affects you. Every other week, we run a personal testimony on there. And the personal testimonies have a great effect. I know we've had people from the church here give their testimonies. We have other live testimonies, and we have some that are pre-recorded that, you know, we have done. I don't know how much you know about Celebrate Recovery, but it's in 35,000 churches across the United States and in Europe. You know, Celebrate Recovery has, if you work the program, through the entire session, has about an 84% recovery rate. You know, of that recovery rate, you know, that the people say it's in this church that are members of this church that go through that, 70% of that 84 become active members in the church. This is a non-denominational thing on there, but it has helped a lot of people. You notice from everybody that came up to speak, we said your name, and I'm a grateful believer in Jesus, or I'm a child of God, and stuff like that. We don't, at AA and NA, you get up and say your name, and I'm an alcoholic, or I'm a drug addict. We don't want you to do that, Celebrate Recovery, because you put that label on yourself as your identity. Being an addict, alcoholic, or whatever you're suffering from is not who you are. First and foremost, you're a child of God, you know, and you're suffering from this, whatever it is. So that's why we ask them to do that. Once we get that in their mind that, you know, hey, this is not who I am really, you know, but I have this problem on there. So then we come back and, like I said, we make discussion. I will point out Vicki Patterson's here, Jean Knowles is here, and Deb, and Karen. Where's Karen Norman? Is she here? These 4 ladies, you know, feed these people. And when I said we were going to do this, you know, Deb's first concern was, we're not going to feed them, are we? You know, yeah. So we always make sure we point out, you know, what they do for them in the kitchen. Like Craig said, if it was up to me to do the cooking, it'd be bread and water. Water for sure, because there's a fountain on there. So, if anybody got any questions? So everything was really clear. You understood everything I said. You got no questions about what we do down there. Yes, ma'am. Downstairs? I don't know. I've been doing it now for what? Almost going on 3 years, and I was there about a year and a half or so before I took over. Tim and Molly, I know you, Tim Johnson, Molly Myron, they got the thing started. And I was the only one, and they had a couple other people helping them. I was with the Celebrate Recovery group in Brighton, where I, you know, helped pastor down there. And so we had plenty of leaders down there, because we'd been going for several years before they started here. So I decided that I would come up here and help these guys, because none of them had been through the whole program. And so when I came up, and then Tim moved on, and then Molly moved on, and they just kind of left me holding the bag. Which was no problem on there. So, I mean, I know a lot of the people think that it's just for, you know, that we have people from the Lighthouse, but it's not just people from the homeless or from the Lighthouse. We do have a few people that come and just have the meal and they leave. They don't stay for the other, and the rest of the meeting. But we have people from other denominations. In fact, people we have a couple that comes and actually does the child care, John and Becky, right over here. they come pretty faithfully over all the years, except now they got grandkids and activities, so they miss every once in a while, but they have been there faithfully. And it's all run on volunteers. Now, I've had people ask me, what can I do, to volunteer? I said, well, you can come up, you can help in the kitchen. The more people they got in the kitchen, they could just set up a team. You could work at one Tuesday a month, if you had enough people. Because they cook, then they clean up, and that's it. You could help with child care. If we want people to come, I've asked them about child care, I say, yes, we do, but then when we got 10 kids, 2 people can't really handle the 10. Because it can range anywhere from infants on up to about 12 and that. So, there is another portion of Celebrate Recovery called Celebrate Place that while we were doing this meeting downstairs for the adults, they would have another meeting in another area of the church that would work with the kids going from, grade school up to about 13. And then that group of, and then we also, there's a group that we have in Brighton, it's called Landings, and that takes in the kids from 14 up to 18. And it does, same thing, gives them a lesson, kind of gives them a clue about, they know mom and dad got problems, and this is gonna help them not to get in the same situation that their folks did, because it helps them to understand what's going on. You had a question over here, again? How many serve a week? Well, it can vary, but it usually can run anywhere from 25 to 50. Yeah. Last month, I think we had over 30 each Tuesday, and we decided not to hold it the Tuesday of this month because of Vacation Bible School. But, those that attend, we have to cancel. We canceled a few times on the weather. And then they were, kind of upset because some of these people need the meetings. I've had people come down and I have to sign, their deal from the judge, and they say what time they got there, what time they left, and that. So it's required in some cases. I've had people come in and say, I've got to attend 30 meetings in 30 days, which is kind of tough. We started here with Brighton, years ago, and then we got here at Washington on Tuesdays, and Brighton's is on Thursdays, same type of program. Then eventually, there's one in Mount Pleasant now that's just also on Tuesday nights, and there was one in Fairfield on Thursday. And I know they've got it, we've had people from Rose Hill come up here to our Celebrate Recovery and model theirs down in their area, down by Ottumwa. People from Ottumwa has one, Fort Madison has one. There's a couple in the Iowa City, Coralville area. Then you get up into Cedar Rapids, Waterloo. They all, and Cedar Falls all have these Celebrate Recovery things going on. So this is a worthwhile program. And you guys should give yourselves a big applause for being the sponsor, because you're the only church in town that's got Celebrate Recovery. And the big thing to do is, you got friends and neighbors that, relatives, whoever. I had people come and tell me, well, I've got so-and-so, my friend or my spouse or boyfriend or whoever, and say, he should come to this. And I said, well, is it a problem for him? And then she said, well, no, but it's a problem for you. He says, yes, well, then you should bring him, on there. I said, Celebrate can't help anybody that, like it says, is denying they got a problem. I mean, the whole thing is we're going to lie to ourselves, I said, oh, I can quit any time I want. It's not a problem. Well, you don't recognize it as a problem, but everybody else around you does. We had one gentleman did come one time, and he said, called me, and he says, I'm on vacation, but he said, I need this program. And he said, as soon as we get back, he said, I'll join you. And he said, he'd had an intervention from the family. Told him he'd either get squared away, sobered up, or don't bother coming back to see the grandkids until you do. So he's been pretty faithful there. There's also what's called a step study, which we go through these questions and we talk about an issue with this, what we call a small group. Now that group, you discuss any issue that they may be having, and we can encourage them, work the program, stick with what you got going, and that. But the step study is just more of a personal, intervention for yourself. There's a little 4-part book. There's 4 books in this particular thing. And it starts out going through all these principles that we have up there. It's basically like AA, that Craig said, but we, higher power, recovery is Jesus Christ. And that's it on there. These books here, you go through 4 of these, and there's specific questions in here, like when we have small group, it's open for any discussion the person might have. But then it gets specific questions that you have to answer that makes you, take a good look at yourself. And it talks about, talked about making amends to people that hurt you. Talks about, forgiving that way, making amends to people you've hurt. So you got to look at, they make a list of, your moral inventory and say, here's my good points, here's my bad points. And we have to keep telling everybody, make sure that you keep it balanced. Don't have a whole lot of bad points over here and 1 or 2 good points. Now you have to keep it balanced. If you need help, then get with somebody that knows you and say, that can point out some of your good aspects, that you're overlooking. And with that, then when we close at 8 o'clock, then everybody goes on and gets ready for next week. Any other questions? Now, if you want more information, I know there's a pamphlet back there on the table. That'll tell you pretty much everything that goes on with Celebrate Recovery. There's more individual information down in the basement and that. So, and then the other thing, you want to volunteer, you can get with Deb and say, I can make cookies or make bars and just, bring them around. If you don't want to, that's not a problem. People like desserts, on there. Well, thank you for the opportunity to come. I'm sorry we couldn't get the whole thing working right. So, turn it over to you. want to speak out, wants to ask questions, the team will be here. You can ask Deb, Ashley, Craig, myself, any other questions. You know, we'll be in the back. You know, we do that same with the ship ceremony. We're telling people, if you don't have the nerve to come up front and get it, we'll get what you want after.